Tom Xavier was the best thing that happened to young Zeke. It was pure luck they met each other that day. But was it a coincidence they met each other? Or maybe there was actually a bigger plan in play. That is what we're going to talk about in today's video, so get comfortable as we take a trip down memory lane. Hello anime fans and welcome back. I'm Manga Horse and today we're going to dive into the past of Grisha, Zeke, Kruger, and Tom Xavier, and try to find out some new information about what really happened in those years on Marley. First, let me apologize for not posting a video for a long time. Unfortunately, I was out of commission and I lost my voice, therefore I couldn't record for a while. But I'm all better now and I hope everyone here are healthy, safe, and excited to dive into some good Attack on Titan theory. A good theory, in my opinion, must have two things. First, a compelling story, twist, or some unknown information. And second, it needs some connections or facts to back it up. So, first, I will try to establish an early connection between Tom, the Jaeger family, and Kruger by showing you all the pieces of the puzzle. And after we'll have all the pieces, I will paint you a picture of what I believe really happened on those years. If you enjoy my videos and you want to see more like that, don't forget to subscribe and to give this video a little like to let me know you enjoy this kind of content. Of course, if you are an anime watcher or if you are not caught up with the manga, there will be serious spoilers in this video, so please continue watching at your own risk. Family is a huge thing in Attack on Titan. It is the driving force for a lot of our favorite characters, and for some, it is what shaped them to be the way they are. That was also the case of young Zeke, who desperately needed a supporting father figure while growing up. And let's face it, back then Grisha wasn't the most supportive dad. But lucky for Zeke, he met Tom at a young age, and Tom gave him the support he so desperately needed. Since Tom entered our story, he always looked to us like a decent man who simply decided to help a weak child in need. But some things that Tom said caught my attention the minute I read them. One of those things was Tom telling Zeke that his parents never loved him. I remember thinking this is a horrible thing to say to a child, and obviously not true. And although it is a very small detail, it made me look at Tom in a different light. And that made me do some serious digging. Let me be clear, I am not trying to label Tom as good or bad. I am simply going to show you several times he lied to Zeke and also to us. Now, I'm not saying he had evil intentions, but I do believe he knew much more than he actually revealed, and also I believe he was part of a much bigger plan. And like always, this is only my own theory and opinion, and I absolutely can be wrong. So please, feel free telling me your thoughts in the comments. And with that, let's jump to the day Zeke met Tom for the first time, in the manga. One of the first things Tom asks Zeke is for his name. This is strange because Tom clearly knows this is Zeke Jaeger, because he's been told that just a few panels before. Why did he ask him for his name? Couldn't he just say, "Hey, you're Zeke, right?" What is the benefit of not telling him he knew his name? Well, this is not a major lie, so just remember this exact moment because we are going to go back to it very soon. At this point, let me remind you that all Eldians in Marley live in Liberio, which is an internment zone, which obviously is not spacious or luxurious. And we can definitely see that just from looking at Grisha's childhood home. In these conditions, it is not so far-fetched to believe that most of the people who live there know each other or at least saw each other at least once. So let's jump to the year 817 and see who Grisha met on Liberio on that day. Looks familiar? Well, in my opinion, this is without a doubt younger Tom Xavier, only he's wearing a hat. And look at his distinctive glasses and coat. But does he know Grisha? Yep, he absolutely does. Still not convinced? The same man also appeared in the manga. Do you want more? He then appeared again when Grisha was older, and again, he appeared in the anime and also in the manga. We all know that Isayama is very specific about the fine details, and this man appears several times for a reason. we see him with young Grisha, which means that he also knows his family, because, well, let's face it, a grown man knowing a child and not his parents can be somewhat creepy. Then, we see him again trying to protect Grisha a few years later. And finally, we see him standing next to Mr. and Mrs. Jaeger as their son Grisha is being arrested. That is the connection that I needed in order to show that Tom knew Grisha and his family across a long period of time. So let's go back to the time when Tom allegedly learned about Zeke. At that point, I'm sure Tom knew exactly who Zeke was, and even if he didn't, he should have recognized the name Jaeger. So not only that he knew him, but he also knew his parents, but he never mentioned it to Zeke. In all the years they spent together, not a word about him knowing his parents. And now, it's time to do some connections. In the year 832, Kruger and Grisha met on top of the outer wall of Paradise Island. Just before that, the person interrogating Grisha mentioned the owl was probably in connection with Izuru, which back then was an enemy state. That point actually gave grounds to one of my favorite theories of this story, so I really recommend you to watch this video as well. Kruger told Grisha about a doctor that helped him falsify his documents, just like he did for himself before. He also mentioned that doctors are excellent spies and can also learn Titan chemistry. If you notice, everything Kruger told Grisha about the paths is almost similar to what Tom told Zeke. We also know that Tom was a Titan researcher with extensive knowledge about the paths and Titans. He knew about the vow to renounce war, and he even knew how to break it. He also knew about past events, like the plague that happened 600 years ago, and about the Founder's Titan true power, and how he saved the subjects of Ymir from dying back then. You probably guessed that I believe that Dr. Kruger is talking about was in fact Tom. After all, Tom also told Zeke that he pretended to be Marleyan for years, and even started a family. And that brings us to Tom's most obvious lie, and to one more big connection to Zeke. As we all know, Tom said that he simply took down his Eldian armband in order to hide his true identity. Now let me ask you, do you really think anyone in Liberio, which is an internment zone, could simply take off his armband, get married and have kids just like that? Well, I call bullshit on that story, because it sounds ridiculous and far too easy. This story is obviously fake, and therefore another lie from Dear Tom. Now, let's examine this sad panel of Tom looking at his wife and child. Do you see anything familiar in this picture? Look closely. Did you find it? What do we have here on the floor? Is that a monkey doll? Interesting. Do you remember anyone else with a similar doll? I know you do. So now, it's time to tell you my version of what really happened on those years. But before I'll go on, let me just explain one crucial thing. Although this is only a theory, the timeline I'm going to show you is based on actual facts from the Attack on Titan wiki, the official Attack on Titan guidebook, my previous videos, which have also been highly researched, and of course, like always, lots and lots of calculations. After I calculated everything, I compared it to Grisha's age when he became a doctor, and my calculation showed that Grisha is 18, the exact age that Isayama told us he is, and that was confirmation for me that my calculations were actually correct, down to the same year. That cannot be a coincidence, at least in my opinion. So now, I am happy to share with you my timeline and the untold secret plan of Tom and Eren. In the year 802, Eren Kruger's father and his friends from the Eldian Revolutionary Army are captured and get burned alive while young Eren is watching from his hiding space. Kruger, who is only 10 years old, gets saved by friends of the family. We don't know for sure who they were, but we can assume they are the rest of the old Eldian Revolutionary Army. According to this panel, we have confirmation that Kruger did find shelter in Izuru. Back then, Izuru was still at war with Marley, so it is safe to say that Kruger left Marley around those years. In the same years, Tom Xavier forges his own papers to pose as Marleyan, probably to avoid a fate like the rest of the Revolutionary Army. He gets married, and he and his wife have a kid together. In the year 806, Grisha Jaeger is born inside Liberio. Around the same years, Kruger manages to come back to Marley. Also in those years, Tom loses his wife and son. In year 810, Kruger, now around the age of 18, manages to infiltrate the Marleyan army with the help of Tom Xavier, who by now is already working as a doctor, and also still in contact with the remains of the old Eldian Revolutionary Army. In the year 817, Grisha and Faye Jaeger go outside the walls of Liberio and meet in the way Tom Xavier. Kruger, now at age 25, catches them and Faye gets killed. On that day, Kruger sees something in Grisha's eyes, a burning hate that reminded him of himself. 2 years later, in the year 819, Kruger, now 27 years old, inherits the Attack Titan. Around those years, Kruger helps a new group called the Eldian Restorationists, which is probably the remains of the Revolutionary Army, only under a different name. In the year 824, Grisha Jaeger, now 18 years old, starts working as a doctor and still has contact with Tom Xavier. Soon, he will learn the truth about his sister's death and will join the Eldian Restorationists. At this time, we can also assume that Kruger marked Grisha as a possible successor to the Attack Titan, because he saw how Grisha follows the same ideals he himself believed in, like he mentioned to Grisha later on top of the wall. Kruger, working under the name Owl, sends Dina Fritz to join the Eldian Restorationists. 1 year later, Zeke Jaeger is born. Kruger and Tom, that are working together, now know there is a child with royal blood inside Liberio, and that is when they start to work on their plan. Tom, who like we saw knows the Jaeger family, goes to visit Grisha and gives baby Zeke the monkey doll that used to belong to his dead son. At that time, Tom and Kruger decide to keep a close look on Zeke and help him in any way possible to inherit the Beast Titan. But they have a problem, because Zeke is still too young, while back then Marley didn't entrust the Titan powers to little kids. That was before the warrior program. Kruger knows how deeply Grisha hates Marley, and he knows that like Grisha's dad, Grisha will also probably try to influence his own child. 4 years later, on year 829, Kruger, who by now served Marley for years, is now a high-ranking officer on Marley. He uses his connections to help Tom inherit the Beast Titan in order to save it for Zeke. Tom told Zeke that the Beast Titan was not suited for combat, which is another lie because we all saw Zeke using it in combat several times in a very effective way. It's actually more likely that Tom avoided fighting because back then Hizuru was the enemy and Tom and Kruger had connection with them, and also because he didn't want to risk losing the beast in battle. But it will take years until Zeke will be old enough to inherit the beast. So, in the same years, Kruger manages to convince the Marleyan government to start using children as Titan shifters. And 1 year later, on the year 830, the warrior program starts, and as expected, Grisha enlists his young son to the program. Unfortunately for Tom and Kruger, young Zeke is not doing so well in the program, and we can actually see the worried expression on Tom's face while watching Zeke struggle. We can also see the foggy glasses line, which is a sign of a character keeping some sort of secret or unknown information. Tom also notices the bad influence and lack of support Grisha gives to his son. So, Kruger and Tom decide to send Tom to keep an eye on Zeke and give him the mental support he needs. Meanwhile, the first set of kids inherit the Titans. We don't know those kids. They are the previous generation that came before Reiner, Bertold and Annie. Zeke of course is not part of them, but the Beast Titan is still secured under Tom. In the following 2 years, Tom and Zeke become closer, and Zeke gets the motivation he needs from Tom and not from his father. This is where the second part of the plan starts. Kruger knows he is running out of time and his 13 years Curse of Ymir duration is about to end. Now this part is really only a wild guess. Kruger by now already decided that Grisha is going to inherit the Attack Titan from him. In his eyes, the Attack Titan is perfect for Grisha because of how Grisha is similar to Kruger and to his beliefs. Kruger then deliberately informs Marley about the existence of a new group called the Eldian Restorationists, led by a spy in Marley called the Owl. He makes sure that young Zeke is around to hear that. So why do I think Kruger did that? Because everything happened conveniently just around when Kruger was at the end of his 13 years term. And that seems too accurate to just be a coincidence. Zeke, which trusts Tom completely, tells him about his parents. Tom, of course, already knows exactly what is going on. He manipulates Zeke into doing the one thing possible, turning his parents in. But why should Zeke do this? Because Tom and Kruger wanted to make sure Marley trusts Zeke without a doubt, and after Zeke turns in his parents, Marley is indeed sure that Zeke is 100% loyal to Marley, and even more, he is considered as some sort of patriot, dedicated to the future of Marley. In the year 832, Grisha, now 26 years old, is brought to the outer wall of Paradise and inherits the Attack Titan from Kruger, just as planned. Notice that Kruger doesn't ask Grisha to restore Eldia. He only tells him to find the Founding Titan, take it from the king, and to settle down and start a family, which also, according to their plan, will take the Founding Titan out of the picture for the upcoming years, because Grisha is not royal blood member, and he cannot use the Founder's power or even be affected by the vow to renounce war, which, as we all know, Tom knows all about. That part of the plan actually succeeds, and the Attack Titan is moved from Marley into Paradise. In the following years on Marley, Zeke and Tom become much closer. Tom is a mentor for Zeke, and Zeke trusts him completely. This is the time the euthanasia plan comes into play. While we think it was all Zeke's idea, we can clearly see how Tom is driving Zeke in this direction, making him understand the true power of the Founding Titan, and also adding his own sad story into the mix, and telling Zeke how he wished he was never been born into this world. Tom explains to Zeke how to break the vow to renounce war. Tom knows, or at least assumes, that Zeke's father holds the Founding Titan in Paradise by now, so this is a pretty good scenario for them. On the year 842, Tom convinces Marley that the young warriors need an adult to act as war chief. Marley looks at Zeke as a trophy kid, the boy that gave up his own family for the sake of Marley, so it is a perfect match for them. And like that, and according to their plan, Tom, with a smile on his face, finally passes on the Beast Titan to the child with the royal blood. Zeke is now 17 years old, and only 1 year later, on 843, 5 new kids inherit their titans. They are, of course, Rainer, Berthold, Annie, Marcel, and possibly also Pique, who we don't know much about yet. 2 years later, in 845, the infiltration team goes out to Paradise in order to capture the Founding Titan, which by now should have been with Grisha, but as we all know, it didn't actually happen, because Grisha stole it on the day of the actual invasion. And finally, 5 years later, in the year 850, the Beast Titan and the Card Titan are also sent to the island, and from that point, we all know what happens. And that is the end of this story. Now, I know, by now most of you have one burning question, and that is, why? Why would Tom and Kruger go through all those troubles to make this plan come to life? That is a good question. I believe one part of the plan was to transfer all Titans to Paradise. First, the Attack Titan, that was most likely in the possession of one of the former members of the old Revolutionary Army before it got to Kruger. Then, the Beast, the Colossal, the Cart, the Female Titan, the Jaw Titan that eventually got stolen, and the Armor Titan, while the Warhammer Titan was out of reach and still under the control of the Tiber family. And what else? Do you remember what Kenny said to Levi before he died? He told Levi that everyone is a slave to something. Money, power, alcohol, freedom, revenge, and basically anything and everything. And like all those people, Tom Xavier was also a slave to something. And that something was knowledge. Now let me explain. Tom dedicated his life to the study of Titan memories, and by then he had the most information about the past and what happened years back. He was able to figure out about the vow to renounce war and how to break it. He was able to understand that the power can be shared through a single touch. He knew things about the past that he himself told Zeke that he found in his research. Therefore, Tom also knew about the fact that previous Titan holders are connected to the current user, and they share experiences, memories, emotions, and maybe even more. He knew that he alone could never reach the founding Titan, so he decided to go for the next best thing, to transfer his power to someone who would finally be able to reach the path, break the vow, and unravel the secrets of the Titans. And he knew that if Zeke manages to do so, he himself would also be part of this experience, even after his death. Now, it may sound strange, but if you think about it, it actually makes sense in the Attack on Titan universe. Along the years, we learned that past Titan shifters do not simply die. They live on, and are even able to communicate and guide the current user on his way. Therefore, even if he dies, Tom knew he would forever be a part of this chain of Titan shifters, past, present, and also future. And Kruger saying the famous line about saving Armin and Mikasa is actually confirmation that the plan worked and the future is now set in motion. And what about Kruger? As I mentioned before, Kruger never asked Grisha to save Eldians. He just told him to retake the founding Titan and to start a family. Something that Kruger never managed to do for himself. And that is, my Titan-loving friends, my idea of the secret plan of the former Beast Titan and the former Attack Titan. If I'm only right about some of the points that I mentioned, this story just got a lot more complicated, and Isayama is once again a true genius for building this complicated yet understandable chain of events, and for offering us the biggest plan of the story that was hidden from us for so long. And now it is your turn. What do you think about this? Did you like my idea? Or maybe you found it to be silly? Either way, I am sure it would at least be a nice story, and I wanted so much to share it with all of you, so please, feel free telling me your opinions about it in the comments or in any of my social media accounts. Thank you again for watching today, my friends, and I will see you real soon. Until then, let me just remind you all to wash your hands, put on a mask, and to dedicate your hearts for humanity, inside and outside the walls.